Hello, everyone. Thank you to all of you who are joining this little video cast here. Just want to share a couple thoughts with you as we start exploring the Aramaic Bible and just the richness of it. You'll see on your screen um, just a little piece that I put together here. Um, it's challenging for me that I cannot find Bible program software in exactly the format that I would like to study in. So created this on my own, just taking some of the, if you look at the first line, you'll see this is Syriac, Aramaic. Of course, it's all Aramaic, but the Syriac characters, estrangela might be the more appropriate term. Um, Below it, you'll see in green the phonetic spelling. And then in the blue, you'll see the Hebrew letters. Again, this is still Aramaic words, but using Hebrew letters. And then in the red is somewhat of the agreed upon translation. Just to confirm with everyone, this is not intended to be a translation, but of course, every translation is subject to the translator, and so you will obviously see my feelings and my bias come out in the translation. So apologize for that. The purpose is not to have you endorse my translation or my choice of words. It's more of a just a Kickstarter, a means to get you thinking and to study this on your own. So please don't take the translation. If anything, it's just the way it speaks to me. So this is John 1:1, a very one of my favorite passages of Scripture, as I'm sure it is to many of you. John's Gospel parallels the book of Genesis very closely, and as I'm learning the Aramaic and being able to study the Aramaic Peshitta Bible, um, this is so incredible because it starts out with the word Bereshith. And this is the same word that Genesis starts out with. And it basically it can be translated numerous ways. The first letter, the beit, is the preposition, which means in, on, upon, numerous things here, but basically saying that in the origin, in the beginning. And then, of course, this First John parallels the first chapter of Genesis very closely. So we're just going to look at a couple of words here, and I think it's just so cool to see the same similar Hebrew word to the Aramaic word starting out the Gospel of John. I do feel that Aramaic was John's primary everyday language. Again, there's a lot of debate that rages out there over, whether the Gospel of John was written in Greek, was it written in Aramaic, was it written in Hebrew? You will find proponents for all of those. The largest camp, of course, being those that feel it was written in Greek. That line is shifting a little bit as people become more understanding of the Aramaic influence, and whether the first gospel was written in Greek or Aramaic, we do, I believe, get quite a consensus that John spoke Aramaic. So his understanding was Aramaic, his thought process was Aramaic, and it's very likely that a person would be writing in their native language, and they'd be most familiar with it. So the thoughts would be best expressed in their native language, because a translation usually doesn't express what is in the heart and the mind of the author. And so just for the purposes of study, for nothing else other than study and personal enrichment, we're going to go with the thought that his writings were first in Aramaic and then later on translated into many different languages, one of them being Greek. And so the understanding of that we'll see come out in some of these words, and that's the real purpose of it here, to give you a greater depth of understanding. So the Bereshith is in the beginning, and we know from the King James Version, we have it pretty well memorized. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And as I looked at it in in the Aramaic language, I saw that there's a deeper understanding and maybe a refinement of some of the sentence structure there. So hang on with me as we go through this. So in the origin, in the beginning, there was existing ethawai. There had been, and hawa is had been. So it gives the understanding that in this beginning, in the origin, what was there? When we go to Genesis, we say in the beginning, the Lord made the heavens and the earth. So with that thought process, bring that into John 1:1 and look at what John is trying to say. What kind of correlation is he trying to bring out? What connection is he trying to make? So he's saying in the beginning, their existing had been. Again, kind of a double play on words, but he's showing that before anything was created, something had been existing. And then we come up to the word that's the topic of our study today, and we're only going to get through this one word, but it's a fascinating word. It's called Meltha or Meltha. Depending upon where you find your pronunciation, because again, vowel pointings and vowel structures are somewhat of a challenge to bring about, because these dots underneath here that you see are the vowel pointings. The dots and the little thing looks like a T. See some dots up above here. These are the vowel pointings that were added much later, after the scriptures were inspired, after they were written down. Like in Hebrew, originally the Hebrew Bible was one string of letters from Genesis all the way through Deuteronomy. Was just one big string of letters, and it had no vowels in it, had no sentence structure, had no numbers, had no divisions for sentences or paragraphs or chapters and verses. Just one big long string of letters, and it reads from left to right, as you see here. So I follow these little arrows. I think I saw another translation book had that in, and it was very helpful to get the idea that you read from right to left, and how to read and follow. But think of the challenge that they had of discerning where the words ended. One word ended and the next word began. So as you're studying Hebrew and Aramaic, try not to get too dogmatic or hung up on pronunciation. This isn't the purpose of this class. This is for personal enrichment, not to obtain a scholarly viewpoint on grammar and sentence structure, but it's to gain understanding of the word. And so we're going to focus on this word Meltha. Now, of course, in English, it's just translated as W-O-R-D, word. And of course, those of us who've been studying realize that the word was made flesh, and it's connected to Jesus as being the word in flesh. But I want to give you just a little bit deeper insight into this word Meltha. The word Meltha really cannot be translated in just one word. Again, trying to use word to describe word is a little challenging here, makes me snicker here a little bit, but Meltha has no direct English equivalent. It can mean word, as it's translated in most every English translation. It can also mean manifestation or instance or substance. In fact, some Aramaic translations don't even try to translate this word Meltha. They leave it as it is, because it has meaning that just cannot be. You just can't use one word to describe it. You have to say Meltha. You can't say word or manifestation or instance or substance, because it's all of these rolled together into this word Meltha. And so that's what we want to, talk about, that even when you think of what existed in the beginning, there was no paper. There were no printing presses. There was no inkwells and quills. There was no papyrus to write upon. Everything was a thought. There was no one to listen to anything that was spoken. So uh, one of the older translations of this word Meltha is the sayings. the sayings that existed. And if you think of, we today have a hard time imagining it because we have paper, we have books, we're so used to seeing things printed down. But imagine if you were illiterate. Imagine that there was no writing substance to make copies and prints. And so if you wanted to learn something, it was passed down verbally. It was there were oral traditions, there was oral teaching. You would learn the scriptures from a learned person who had the ability to read and give you these stories, these oral stories. And so think of what this would have been like, that in the beginning there was no word on paper. There was no printed substance. There were sayings, and sayings are just verbalized thoughts. So in the beginning, there was the Meltha, which was these thoughts, the mind of God. And okay, how do you translate that? How do you think about that? That there's not a manifestation in a bodily form. Again, in my Hebrew studies, I cannot find any um, connotation or reflection or discernment that God was ever assigned as a person. That there were personages is not found in the Hebrew scriptures. That is something that was added later in Christendom as the Christian doctrines were created. But everywhere in the Hebrew scriptures, you find God referred to as a spiritual entity, and not a spirit in something that you can see, but something that's invisible, something that has no boundaries, no containment, is in a realm that we struggle to understand. And so John is trying to tell us that this is what existed in the beginning. All the thoughts, all of the words that the manifestation, the instance, the substance, everything that makes up God were contained in the thoughts of God, in this, and I don't even know how it was contained. How would you say God existed in the beginning? I don't think it's right to picture him as a theophany in a physical form. There was no need for that back then. The earth hadn't been formed. This is a spiritual realm in a dimension that, you can't even see with your physical eyes. So this existing in a whole different realm than anything that we can imagine. We get glimpses of it in knowing that there's a spiritual realm there. Some people say that there are they use the word portals, places where they can enter from the physical realm into the spiritual realm. And okay, I don't know. I guess the Bible gives some instance, maybe where Jacob had his vision of the angels ascending and descending from heaven when he slept on the rock that night. There's some of that going on, but we don't know for sure. But this word Meltha has a depth to it, that this was all of God. And it's more than just sayings. It's more than just some words that can be put on a paper, or even stories passed along. These are the whole essence of God trying to be put in a verbal form. And so John is saying this is what existed in the beginning, was this Meltha, was the manifestation. And of course, that manifestation, we like that because, that gives us clarity later on when it says that this Meltha was made flesh and dwelt among us. What's I find interesting is that in some of the Hebrew writings, of course, the Hebrew Bible is written in Hebrew, but there are other writings called the Targums, which are basically commentaries about the scriptures, and they are written in Aramaic because that was the sister language to Hebrew. And so the commentaries were written in Aramaic because it was the lingua franca, the common language of the time. And in many of these writings where they try to describe this word Miltha, they will actually insert the tetragrammaton. And the tetragrammaton, as we know, is the four letters, the Yod He Vav He. It's we don't know exactly how to pronounce it, but the Tetragrammaton is the word letters used to denote the name of God in the Old Testament. You'll hear it translated Yahweh, Jehovah, Yoheveh, numerous translations, and we don't know the exact pronunciation because the vowels were not included. The vowels that are there right now are the vowels for the word Adonai, which is when a Jewish person is reading the Hebrew scriptures. When they see the Tetragrammaton written, they will substitute and say Adonai or Hashem, which the H is the article meaning the, and Shem is name, so they will say the name as a reference pronunciation for the Tetragrammaton, because they feel that it's the name of Yahweh is too holy to pronounce, and they don't want to take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, so they came up with this tradition of not to pronounce it. So, but in many places in the Targums and in the Aramaic writings, when the word for Meltha is in place, they will actually substitute the word Yahweh, the Tetragrammaton, and put it in there. And it just begins to give us a better, and I feel deeper understanding of this Meltha and what we're going to read about later, that this Meltha became in the Word made flesh. Again, we're going to see that there's some other words as we pick up next week on the rest of St. John that give us an indication that this is all there was the Meltha, because it was the very essence and the very nature of God. So thank you so much for tuning in today on this class. I pray that God's blessing will be upon you, that maybe this will pique your interest a little bit. I know we're going off into areas that may not be familiar for many of you, but I just pray that you will become enriched and know that God has left us such a wonderful witness, wonderful testimony of scriptures in the Aramaic, in of course, the Greek and the Hebrew, and even the Latin gives us some different insights, these different translations. So we're going to investigate these and do this all to just help you fall deeper and deeper and deeper in this great and wonderful God that we know and love and serve. So God bless you and have a great day. Bye-bye.